Radio Row in Indianapolis. It's Combine time as teams look for their next superstar. Some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment will be right here. Get ready for the 2026 draft, baby. It's the Jake Asman Show.
Back inside the Indiana Convention Center, and we're joined right now by ESPN draft analyst Jordan Reid. And Jordan, we got to start with this. I just got through 20-something weeks of working on Sunday with Mike Tannenbaum. You do the draft with the man every year on ESPN radio. I should have called you before the year for some advice how to deal with Mike T.
You should have, man. Mike T is one of my favorite guys in the industry just because he's one of the guys that can go from telling a story about Brett Favre to telling you everything from the background about these prospects in this draft. That GM hat just never comes off with him.
Oh, yeah. He's got some wild trade proposals he's coming up with. I will say this. Mike was the first that I saw, at least in the mainstream, to be like gung-ho, all in on Fernando Mendoza.
Yes. Before
it was like the cool thing to say, oh, he's clearly QB1. Like we're talking about early September, maybe. Yep. He already started comparing him to Matt Ryan.
Yeah, he's with Fernando, man. He's just so resilient. That's the thing that he showed throughout the season. Just think of all the big moments of adversity he was able to overcome this year. Going into Oregon, winning early on in the season, taking big hit after big hit against Iowa, going in and winning against that tough defense in bad weather, albeit. And then also the last drive against Penn State, the fourth quarter win on that one. And then the big hit against Ohio State, the very first play of the game, he comes back to win that one. And then the big hits that he took against Miami in a national title, he goes on to score the game-winning touchdown.
Called his own number.
Just the moments of resiliency that he has shown, it's just something that has been remarkable about him. And I think he's going to go on to be the eventual number one pick for the Las Vegas Raiders.
The Jet fan base hears that and goes, man, what could have been? Same record as the Raiders, strength of schedule, percentage points, the difference between the Jets getting the top pick and Vegas getting the top pick. So kind of a perfect way to segue. At number 2, it feels like this year it's more wide open than I can remember, where there's not an obvious best non-quarterback in this draft. Mm-hmm. What would you do if you're the Jets?
I go against what a lot of people are saying right now. I know Arvell Reese is like the overwhelming favorite, but the player that I would select would be Ruben Bain out of Miami. And I say that because you have 5 first-round picks over the next 2 years. I want somebody that's going to come in right away and establish an identity. And if there's one player I know that is going to come in pro-ready right away at a position of need that is going to be a culture changer, I know Ruben Bain is going to be that. All you have to do is listen to Mario Cristobal, the head coach of Miami, talk about him. And there's 2 players that he always singles out when he's talking about the players that changed the program. It's Francis Maui-Noah, who's an offensive tackle in this year's class that's like going to be a top 10 pick, and it's Ruben Bain. And I just think Ruben Bain makes so much sense for the Jets from that point at a position of need. He's going to be a culture changer, and you're trying to change the identity of your team. And I think he's going to be able to do that right away.
When it comes to Bain, I know this will be a topic this week, the arm length.
Yeah.
Does it matter, in your opinion, as someone who evaluates these players? Like, is Ruben Bain's arm length going to be a reason that he potentially has any sort of issue at the next level?
It doesn't for me, just because I've seen him produce in big moments, and he's had that production all throughout the season. And having arm length really doesn't matter to how the way that he does win, if that does make sense. He's a power-based defensive end that can overpower people, but also he can run the hump and win around the edge too. So him being a power-based defensive end, I don't really care as much about the arm length.
If not Bain at 2, talk to me more about Arvell Reese. Right now I'm sponsored by FanDuel. Arvell Reese is the betting favorite to go number 2. It's only minus 115, so it's not crazy. It was a lot more before. But Arvell Reese, if he were to be the pick at 2, is he projected in your mind as an edge? Is he a true outside linebacker? What would exactly be the role for him playing for the Jets if they took him there?
I like him personally as an off-ball linebacker, but if you take somebody at number 2 overall, you're expecting them to play defensive end just because you're going to get more value at that position. And there's flashes of him potentially being successful at that position, but right now he's just really raw at that position. So you're betting on the projection of him eventually translating to bring back that value of being a premier player. But at number 2 overall, you're playing with a very hot stove as far as him projecting him to be that potential premier player at edge rusher.
Is he a guy that, does he remind you of like Micah Parsons? I've heard some comp him to that. Like what would his role be initially on an Aaron Glenn type of defense? A lot of people think the Jets will switch to like a 3-4. So is he a guy that you could see lining up a lot at the outside linebacker spot?
Yeah, I think he compares very favorably to Micah. I don't think he's as polished as what Micah was coming out specifically as a pass rusher. I think Micah had a little bit more juice. And then also, he, with his hands, he just had a little bit more maturity, and his repertoire was a little bit more diverse than what Arvell's is right now.
How about David Bailey, another popular name that Jet fans have seen mocked to their team at 2? Your thoughts on the Texas Tech defensive end as a possible option?
A fantastic pass rusher. I think he can be a 12 to 14 sack type of player right away, walking through the door. One of the better pure pass rushers in this class. He has elite explosiveness, getting up the field right away. The bend is above average, but also the hand usage, I think that is very far along in his development. So another player, of course, that is a contender at number 2 overall.
All right. Got to ask you about the safety debate.
Yeah.
Is number 2 in the draft too high to take a player like Caleb Downs, who your coworker, the great Mel Kiper, in his latest mock, he did mock,
right?
He did mock Downs at number 2 to the Jets. So that's been a big topic on my show today. Your thoughts, Jordan?
Mel always loves to throw curveballs, right? I don't think it's too high at all. And I say that just because in this class, there's 2 players who I think are the best in the class. Downs is one, and Jeremiah Love. Obviously, they're not going to take Jeremiah Love because they have Breece Hall. But you can throw positional value out the window in this year's class just because of the lack of blue chip talent. And at the end of the day, if I'm Darren Muji, the one area where I'm going to be graded on is if I hit on this pick or if I miss on this pick. Nobody's going to really care about positional value when it comes to a second contract or anything like that. If Caleb Downs goes on to be a all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber of player, nobody's going to care where you selected them at. The same thing happened now, not to this degree as far as inside the top 5, but if you remember the Jahmyr Gibbs debate, everybody was like, you don't take a running back that high. The same happened with Bijan Robinson. You don't take a running back that high, but both of those guys have gone on to be Pro Bowl caliber of players, and nobody really cares where they went now.
If they take Downs at 2, like, how special can he be right away? Like, is he at the level of what Kyle Hamilton is? Because, you know, I've been using this example after one of my callers made this point. I think it's spot on. A couple of years ago, the Giants, they took Kayvon Thibodeau 5th overall. Well, same draft, Kyle Hamilton goes pick 14. Who would you rather have now, right? It's a no-brainer. You rather Hamilton. Like, how does Downs compare to that level of player? Because it almost feels like, whether it's fair or not, if you take a safety 2nd overall, he better be one of the best in the league almost right away.
Without question. And I think he definitely has the potential to do that. But with him, he's not the caliber of athlete that we've seen at the top of the draft, the safeties that go early, top 15, like a Kyle Hamilton or a Derwin James or, Eric Berry is another comparison that people are using. He's not the caliber of athlete as those players. But the thing that I think puts him into that tier is the smarts that he plays with, the leadership that he brings to the table, how sure of a tackler he is, and then just how many different ways that you can use him. And I think the biggest thing that I love about him is that he played in a Matt Patricia defense, which is very complex, and he was able to master it. They used him as that middle hole, middle rat type of player, which I think what he has to do on the next level. The player that I compare him to is Budda Baker. I think he is a mirror image of Budda Baker, who's went on to be a multi-time All-Pro player. If you get a multi-time All-Pro player at number 2 overall, I think Jets fans will be very happy about that.
Yeah, that's certainly exciting. How about the decision at 16? Because it feels like a lot of Jet fans would love to see Mekhi Lemon or one of the receivers, Carnell Tate, someone make it to that spot. 1, do any of the quote-unquote top 3 make it to 16? And 2, if not a receiver, what are some of the other options potentially there for the Jets?
I think D-tackle could be another option as well. They need that big guy in the middle, whether it's a Peter Woods out of Clemson, Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, or even Caden McDonald out of Ohio State, who's somebody I've been mocking very frequently to the Jets at number 16 overall. They need that big space eater in the middle, which is something they don't have currently on the roster right now. So defensive tackle could be a possibility. Wide receiver could be an option as well. I don't see Lemon making it that far. I think Tyson could be on the board because of the medical situations, but with these picks that the Jets have, I just don't think that's a risk that is worth taking right now, just because with these 5 first-round picks that you have, you want to make sure that they are bona fide hits without any hiccups or question marks in their evaluation.
Speaking of risk, I've seen the Ty Simpson conversation with the Jets a lot. He's been mocked at times by Mel and by Matt Miller and several other top draft people with ESPN. 16 to the Jets. Could you see it? I mean, we know the Jets have the 3-1s in 2027, but would Ty Simpson, would he make sense in that spot for the Jets?
as I just mentioned, I don't think you need to take high-risk prospects like that. And I think Ty Simpson is a very high-risk prospect, and I say that because he's only had 15 college starts.
Right.
And the only guys that have had that limited number of starts to go in round one, you're in Mitchell Trubisky, Mark Sanchez, Anthony Richardson territory.
The last guy you could say was clearly like a home run was Cam
Newton.
in 2011.
He was the only one, and two different stratospheres.
Right.
With as far as physical traits with Ty Simpson and Cam Newton. You couldn't draw up two quarterbacks that as far as the inverse level of physical traits than those two. But with Ty, I just think it's too risky, especially at such an important position. You just don't need to take that type of risk right now.
Is there a guy on day 2, they have pick 33, pick 44, at day 2, even some day 3 guys that you think are worth the swing if you're the Jets? Maybe you don't make the big first round swing because you have 2027 for that, but they got to take someone, you would think, for that room. Is there a guy or two out there that you think would make some sense?
Well, I mean, if you're just trying to take somebody that you think could develop into something later on down the road, I think somebody like Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU in the 3rd or the 4th round, I think he's somebody that's worth taking. Carson Beck in that same range as well, even a Drew Aller in the 3rd or 4th round. So if you're looking for what I like to call those lottery tickets that you're hoping that could eventually turn into something, those are 3 that could be in range.
What is we hear every year there's X amount of blue chip players. This year it feels like there's not as many because some of the lack of quarterbacks have to do with that. How many on your personal big board would you consider like blue chip players in this class?
For me, there's only 2. It would be Caleb Downs and also Jeremiah Love. Those are your 2 guys that are bona fide blue chip talents. To me, I think Arvell Reese is debatable.
Interesting. And then what's the tier below that? Is it a decent like depth type of draft? Like where are the strengths of the draft if you're someone who has all these picks like what the Jets have?
I think there's a lot of depth at receiver. You're going to see those guys fall off the board in the 2nd round. And then safety and corner, I would be surprised if one of those first 4 picks is not a safety for the Jets, especially those 2 picks in the 2nd round. I think that's the real sweet spot of where we can see some of these guys fall off of the board, like a A.J. Halsey out of LSU. Zakee Wheatley is another name that I like in that range out of Penn State as well. So I think you're going to see these receivers and safeties fly off of the board.
I get asked this all the time, and people do the mock draft simulators, and they think it's like easy to make trades. Jake, the Jets, can they trade out and then take so-and-so? At 2, it doesn't feel like there's an obvious player teams are coming up for. Mm-hmm. Do you see it the same way? Like, what is a path, if there is one, for the Jets to potentially move out of 2 or maybe even move out of pick 16 as well?
I think it's going to be tough for them to move out of 2 just because who are you trading up for in this year's class? But if I were the Jets, I would be very tempted to move up from 16, especially if somebody starts to fall down the board. So let's say we can get a Ruben Bain at 2. Why not try to move up and get a Caleb Downs, at 9 or 10?
Do you think Downs could actually fall?
It's possible just because you don't know how teams value safeties. And, I could sit here and say screw positional value in this year's class, but there's some teams that really stick to their principles of not valuing a safety that high, and he ends up, he's still there on the board. And, the Chiefs at 9 may want to move back. The Bengals at 10 may want to move back as well. So I think it would be a home run if they could come out of round 1 with somebody like Ruben Bain or a defensive end at 2 and then get Caleb Downs.
Last question, because as a Jet fan and someone who does a Jet podcast, we're already talking about 2027. We hear it every year, though.
Yeah.
Well, next year's quarterback class is going to be even better. Is next year's quarterback class actually going to live up to the massive amount of hype that we're already hearing about it? And, of course, as Jet fans, we're looking at that with the 3 first-round picks, Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers, Sayin, all these guys. Of course, Dante Moore going back to school. Just give us your way too early assessment, of course, of the 2027 QB class.
I'm always hesitant to say something is loaded, but 2027, regardless of position, is loaded. Quarterback, man, there's so many guys that could be round 1 picks. You already said Arch, Lenoris.
I'm selling shirts at my merch store. I'm marching for Arch already.
Right. PU for nephew. That's my trademark that I've said as far as the slogan that I'm going to use for him. But even Darian Mensah at Miami, somebody that potentially could climb boards as well. So there's a lot of quarterbacks in next year's class that, are seen as early round talents, but I'm just hoping it holds true, which is something that did not happen this year.
Jordan, continued success, man. Good luck dealing with Mike T on draft night, and looking forward to catching up with you throughout the offseason, man. Good luck.
Thanks as always for having me, Jake.
Jordan Reid from ESPN. We'll take a quick break and continue live from Radio Row. It is the Jake Asman Show here at the NFL Scouting Combine.